Welcome everyone to the November Citizen Involvement Council meeting. Before we get started, I just want to say a few words about our police officers here in Oregon City. They are a wonderful group of people, and we all know about a tragedy that happened yesterday. So there are flyers in the back in reference to the tragic injury of Officer Robert Libke, and if you'd like to pick one up, you can find a way there suggested to help out with his family. Thank you for that. We'll proceed now to the roll call.
Tony Uzuabunum?
Yes.
Michael Berman is excused. Paul Edgar?
Here.
Amy Wilhite? Here. Kathy Hogan?
Here.
Tom O'Brien is excused. Steve Anderson?
Present.
Faith Leith?
Here.
Alice Watts?
Here.
Damon Mabey?
Here.
Bob LaSalle?
Here.
Barbara Rankin?
Here.
Diane McKnight?
Here.
Eileen Olson is excused. Marianne Jensen?
Here.
Ingrid Rickenbach?
Here.
Todd Last?
Here.
Brian Boyce?
Here.
And welcome to our newest member, Kim Dye.
Here. And let's also have the audience please introduce themselves so that we can make them feel welcome. Could we start with Tom in the back?
I don't need the microphone. Tom Guile. Thank you. Tom Guile. Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you.
Christina Robertson Gardner, Oregon City Planning.
Thank you.
Karen Morey, the newly elected vice chair of the Rivercrest Neighborhood Association.
Good.
Linda Basinger, Kanema, Vice Chair.
Thank you to our guests. If you do want to join in the discussion tonight, all you need to do is fill out a little form in the back of the room that Katie will make available to you, and then hand it to Katie, and she'll make me aware that you would like to speak. So thank you for that. And we do limit people to 3 minutes, although it seems odd to say that because we rarely adhere to that. But I'm going to try to get better. We want to give everyone a chance. Tonight we have a presentation on the Willamette Falls Legacy Project, and I guess that's you, isn't it?
Thank you, Chair Watts. My name is Christina Robertson Gardner. I'm a planner with the City of Oregon City, and I'm also the project manager this year for the year-long visioning and master planning of the former Blue Heron Paper Mill site, which we're calling the Willamette Falls Legacy Project. Many of you may have seen this presentation in the last couple of weeks. Kelly Moosberger with our office have been doing it. So can I just so I know who my audience is, can you raise your hand if you've seen the latest presentation that shows the concept alternatives from the October 10th? Okay, we have a lot. So what I'll try to do is go very fast, and then depending on the time, I'm open for comment and feedback, and I'll take some notes, and then I'll let you know some additional opportunities for engagement. We are kind of midway through the process, but our goal is to have these kind of continuous iterations back to all of our boards, so we can have a constant feedback loop as we move forward through the process. So as you can see, this is the Blue Heron site. The Willamette Falls Legacy Project is quite unique. It's made up of project partners, which is the City of Oregon City, Metro Regional Government, Clackamas County, State of Oregon, especially through state parks, and the Regional Solutions Office in Portland. And most importantly, we are working with the bankruptcy trustee, Peter McKittrick, who has been appointed the federal bankruptcy trustee for the property. So where we are in the process, we are kind of, once again, halfway through this not even quite year-long visioning and master planning process. We went through a agreement with Peter McKittrick on a very quick timeline on how to reduce and remove barriers for redevelopment as this property is for sale and is still for sale. Many of you know Eclipse LLC out of Irvine, California did not go through with their deal, so the property is for sale today. We know that we as government bodies can remove barriers for redevelopment by rezoning the property and trying to create more certainty to the project. Right now there's so much uncertainty that a lot of developers are interested, but they're waiting on the sidelines, or maybe they want to wait till they can do a building or a parcel. But trying to move forward to have a whole site acquisition has proved to be not an easy. So we are moving forward, and as I spoke at the meeting beforehand, one of the other main goals this year, and this is kind of becoming more and more apparent, we are here to start building champions regionally and statewide for this project. We know how amazing Willamette Falls is. A lot of our neighbors in Portland and along the state and elected officials don't know how amazing, and some people even don't even know that there is a Willamette Falls. We are starting sometimes at ground. So all year long, as much as we can do to continue the momentum, continue building long-term champions, is almost as important, I kind of feel even more important than rezoning. I mean, rezoning is really important because it is going to create certainty, and having a framework master plan is very important. But this project champion building, as I'm learning, is really where this project will survive and thrive or wither on the vine. So our two goals this year is a vision strategy. What's the big picture goals? We had a vision survey this summer. As we move forward, we're having alternative concepts at this page. For the final product, which is a framework master plan, a lot of you are used to seeing a development master plan, which is a lot more specific. This building goes here, the restaurant goes here, this is going here. Pull yourself much higher. This is really almost the year zero, the big picture. Where are the streets going? Where are the development parcels? Where's the park? This will come back for a further iteration through a refined master plan, and it'll look more like the master plans you're thinking of. So this is almost taking a step back, but is still needed in order to get that rezone, in order to work with Oregon Department of Transportation, in order to kind of remove those barriers. Especially now, knowing where we are now, there is no developer, we have to find that balance between flexibility and certainty. I always say I'm looking through this spring to be right in that middle. If we are too flexible, we've lost the community support in that champion building. If we're too certain and too specific, we may paint ourselves into a corner, or we may push away development because their goals may not align perfectly with our goals. And developers are really wary when the public has such a specific idea that there's no ability for flexibility. So it's really, when we're done next spring, is we're going to take that barometer. Have we balanced that flexibility, certainty? And that's really, really our goal. As for people who have been on the property, there's for the last 2 years, NRI Global has been removing a lot of the machinery, a lot of the pipes, a lot of the tanks, but there's still a lot of existing industrial remnants and buildings. The shoreline has great opportunities for habitat restoration, but there's also a lot of existing remnants of the industrial process. We also like to look at the site really as having two essence of the water. We have the upper Willamette above the falls is kind of that lighter blue. It's calmer. It's has a much different feeling. That's where we kind of envision a lot more of that. Maybe kayakers can go, where you can have a lot closer public connection to the river. And then you have the lower river, which is farther down grade. It's 40 feet to 60 feet below the site, and it's faster running river, and it has a much different characteristic. Once again, we have these 4 core values that all of the partners have been working on, and I really see these 4 values as being synergistic. This project cannot move forward unless we fully implement these 4 core values, and they're on your screen. Real quickly, I'm going to go through the core values pretty quickly and what Walker Macy, our consultant team, has looked at. This is the PowerPoint presentation. It's a refined version from the October 10th public open house, and it's really their understanding of the site now that they know the existing conditions and some of the existing studies and kind of their lens, and also the public input they heard this summer. Willamette Falls is the only place in the Northwest region where tribes can harvest lamprey, Pacific lamprey, which is a fish. As you know, this is the historic blocks of territorial Oregon, and I love this photo because it shows a connected Main Street. Although this is where this photo is taking us, from the tower of the Oregon City Woolen Mill looking north. So at the very far end, you'll see the old Oregon City County Courthouse. And this is before 99E. This is when Main Street, Oregon City went from 2nd to 10th Street. And that's our goal, is how do we reconnect this site back to Main Street? So it's not a campus. It's this, if you go to the site, you can easily walk across 99E and visit businesses on what we think of our Main Street today, and vice versa. This is a great photo from 1867 showing what the site looked like. You can see the large Oregon City Woolen Mill, the first wing built, and then a lot of the this site had a lot of combination and layers of history. This had a flour mill, this had a woolen mill, this had a paper mill, this was Oregon Territory. You just see these layers and layers of history. Some have remained, some have not, but you can tell that story through this redevelopment. This is a photo of the Hawley Sawmill, which is actually on the foundation of Mill A, which is on the PGE Dam today. So this was, the intake basin was the log lagoon. This is where they brought in logs. This shows the 1964 flood. This is, we're looking at what today is kind of the open PGE foundation, and kind of the overlook area that some of you have been on is right over here, the Hawley Powerhouse. But this is great. This site, great expectation. This site floods. So we need to make sure that when we plan this, we have a good understanding of the hydrology of the river. The other part of historic and cultural, we've been working with the State Historic Preservation Office. There are 15 structures that have potential eligibility for National Register listing on the property of the 55 structures. Not all of them have a really good opportunity for adaptive reuse. Some of them just structurally are hard. Some of them are so specifically built that adaptive reuse may be a problem. A good example is the water treatment plant, which is right here. It was built in 1955, has not really changed an iota since then, so it met the Secretary of Interior standards over 50 years, has integrity. But the adaptive reuse is very hard, and that's a redevelopment block that's totally outside of the floodplain. So what Walker Macy are, and working with the State Historic Preservation Office and ourselves, we are looking at buildings that we want the consultant team in the city to concentrate their energies on, as saying these are important for adaptive reuse. It doesn't mean the other buildings that are potential eligible could not be, but we need to concentrate our energies on some of the buildings. So we've identified these buildings, which is the Hawley Building, Mill O. This is the outline, the foundations of the Oregon City Woolen Mill, number 4 paper machine, and D Inc. This shows the number 4 paper machine in the 1920s. It's, before it's been altered to have these great steel sash windows, but it still has this massing I think is really important for the site, how to tell that industrial story, and also I think really important, the more you keep your large historic structures, the easier it is to do new construction infill and have the new construction infill not take over. So this big massing of historic building is really important to retain as we move forward. The Hawley Pulp and Paper Building is another one. This is a picture of the woolen mill. Here's some examples of how to use remnant structures, and the mill ruins presentation just previously was a good example. This is in Corfu, Greece. The Distillery District in Toronto was a great example of adaptive reuse of a mill district. And this is Mill Ruins Park, which really was able to look at how do you catalyze a great open space and help, along with the museum and other institutionals, really catalyze a whole area of downtown Minneapolis. So the next core value is public access. We heard last summer that people want to use the open space for lots of different reasons, more than just walking to look at the waterfall. And Walker Macy identified a lot of opportunities to have active recreation on these open spaces in the park. Currently, people visit the falls via kayak. I love the paddleboard pictures down there. Those are great. Fishing, and also just the viewing the falls. This is an outline of the site today. You'll see this is 99E as it goes under the tunnel. So you have these first 3 blocks. What we don't have as part of the property is the PGE dam. That is not part of the property, but we are working with Portland General Electric on getting public access out to it. But the other part is this spur line that runs almost to Kenema. That is part of the property. But this is a peninsula. So we are planning this really amazing redevelopment on a peninsula. So we are working with the Oregon Department of Transportation on ways we can increase pedestrian, bike, transit, and cars to access the site. This will only work if we really have a multimodal approach to this site. Historically, I love this photo. It really shows how the site is part of this historic Oregon City. You can kind of see these historic blocks as well as the Mill Reserve, which McLaughlin identified for industrial use. Kind of start seeing back bringing back the original street grid, trying to, especially Main Street, but even the side streets, trying to bring back those historic 40,000 square foot blocks that we have in our existing Main Street. Makes it a lot easier to make that linear connection when the blocks and the development pattern really match what we have up the street. This is an example, is a picture of Publisher's Paper entrance in the late 60s, but you can see how active it is. It wasn't a blocked off peninsula. It didn't have a gate. You could drive on down Main Street and park on the street. This is where it is today. Main Street's still here. We can still reutilize it. We want cars, pedestrians, bikes, everyone to be able to get down Main Street to the end. So you start looking at the grid system, bringing it back, and so you developable parcels really become more obvious. Then you start looking at the existing foundations and industrial foundations. A lot of tanks have been removed, but these foundations, these really hardy foundations, are still there. And as you look at that, you can really start to see how you can kind of string a pedestrian connection all along these remnants as you get out to this, which was the old Mill A Holly Powerhouse, which is now this amazing platform, which you basically overlook the falls. And on a high water day, the mist is just in your face, and you feel like you're at Niagara. Hopefully you can kind of see that. This is the PGE Dam as you walk on it today. This is just a look of what could happen, how we could get public access out there. To our left is the intake basin lagoon. How can we get maybe kayakers out back in? How can we get active non-motorized water sport? And on this side, this is the clarifier. Do we keep it or do we take it out? It's a large circular building and have habitat restoration. This is really the place that we need to get everyone out to. If you haven't been there, call me, talk to me. I want to get you out there because it changes your opinion of the site, I think, the moment you stand right there. And, you know, one of the catalyst projects we're looking at is how soon can we get the public here? Because I think once we get the public there and people know about this site, it's going to make economic redevelopment all the more likely. If we hide this, it's much harder. And this is the view when you're standing out. This is what you could see. I mean, imagine having a public open space event, going to a wedding, and you're standing on that platform, and that is what you see. So that's the incredible picture we want to bring the whole region down to see. This is a good example, Shoshone Falls in Idaho, about how to use public overlooks right next to falls. Here we have an overlook, but of a flood. This is the 96 flood. But, you know, we need to keep in mind, we need to understand where the 100-year floodplain is, also the 1996 inundation area. And more as we're looking at the site, it's becoming more evident that the 1996 inundation area is a really good demarcation of where open space is probably going to happen, and outside of that is probably where development is going to happen. You start going on the site, you see this light blue. And one way to remind the site, you think of it as flat, but really this whole place starts to then slope pretty quickly down here. So everything on this Main Street level starts to slope, and these buildings are on basements, sub-basements, and pilings. So it looks all flat here, and some is fill. This is a very complicated area. Where over here on the kind of we call the promenade side of Main Street is not in the floodplain and is not as complicated, as well as this area up here right along 99E. So you start putting in that, you start looking at these remnant structures for connection. Good example, Walker Macy kind of was just looking at this Mill E, which is a building that's actually in the lagoon, but it's at the very end of Main Street. And they're kind of talking about, wouldn't it be great if you could walk or drive down Main Street and hit a park that touches the river, where Main Street ends at a park? I mean, how powerful is that, just to follow Main Street to the falls? Well, this is in the middle, this is in the way, but it has a lot of economic opportunity and a lot of pretty easy adaptive reuse. It's not an historic building, but this is actually structurally pretty easy to adaptively reuse. So they looked to say, what happens if we turn this into the brew house and boat house, and it's right on the lagoon, and you can do active water sports? What if half of it stays up and you have this kind of open space park and still an active use right there? Or what happens if all of it goes away? So these are kind of these general development concepts that Walker Macy is looking at. Sioux Falls, South Dakota is a great example of kind of more verdant park right next to a falls. Providence, Rhode Island has some more traditional industrial redevelopment. So real quickly, Healthy Habitat is the next one. This area is on the Willamette River next to Kenema Narrows, has great habitat restoration opportunities. The falls traditionally did not have what you think of as kind of the forests that hit the river. This was always really exposed basalt. It has unique plant materials that kind of thrive on the mist of the falls and have their own unique opportunity for habitat restoration. Right here along the bank, you can see a lot of invasive species that could, we could have, along with the walkway, we could have a lot of new restoration, as well as working with Department of Fish and Wildlife. They recommend adding more roughness to the river, because right now there's not a lot of places for lamprey especially, but also salmon to rest. So kind of creating eddies for roughness. But then, of course, you have this upper kind of quieter area. And how can we bring the public to that? There's also ways to, we have 3 historic mill races that were used to power the different mill properties. Is there ways to open up any of them to look at continually keeping this lagoon much cleaner, moving the water, and then bringing it back through the property? There's also this pedestrian connection almost to Kenema along the spur line. So this is a picture of it. This is 99E, this is the Union Pacific Main Line, and this is the spur line, and that's the Willamette right there. But, here's an example of what a pedestrian path would look like. You can also do habitat restoration within development. This is an example of a green roof on a commercial building. But finally, economic redevelopment. Main Street has done an amazing job in the last 5 years and produced countless new buildings and new adaptive reuse and tax increment. And it's really a success story. So we want to build off of that success story. And we have this amazing falls at the end of it. One thing our economic development team was looking at, these large industrial buildings can actually have some new uses that our typical 1 and 2 story main streets can't do, such as light industry, outdoor apparel, tech, food, arts, education, and traditional mixed use, but also new construction. This is a new construction building kind of near where Bridgeport Brewery is in the Pearl. So this is a brand new building, but it kind of takes off next to some of the industrial buildings that are right over here. So we start, when you start having these layers, you kind of really can see where the new development parcels and where the open space can really look at. Then you take in some of these historic structures that we want to spend. Then you start realizing there's some redevelopment blocks. And then you have really blocks 3 and 4 that have some historic structures but are really complicated and are probably more apt for open space. And that is really all I have. So I want to end there. But why I want to show this is to give you a little update of where we were, how we've come from this summer. But more importantly, if you have not taken it yet, till November 15th, please go to our website, rediscoverthefalls.com, take the survey. Now that you've seen this presentation, I think it'll be easier. We dove into some really specific questions, and the questions we're asking are what's kind of either we want a confirmation that we're going in the right direction, we think we are, or we're not sure about a certain answer. So we really value your opinion. There's 10 questions relating to some redevelopment opportunities and concept alternatives. You can probably take it till the end of the year, but please try to do it before November 15th because it'll be brought into the quantitative analysis. It's also going through opt-in. And then also we have a 3rd community interactive event, and I think it's either December 11th or 12th. It'll be on our website. It's going to be at the Ainsworth House. And that's where we're going to continually talk. Some of the issues we're going to talk about at this next one that we didn't have time for and didn't have it fully developed are parking garage questions, where's the best location, how best we approach structured parking, access issues, changes, how we get to the site, some of the Department of Transportation issues, and then some additional further refining. And hopefully, Walker Macy, you can see some pretty fantastic renderings they've been doing in-house. Sometimes you have to dive into detail to pull yourself back out, and I really hope they can show you the detail. Not that we're going to adopt them, but it'll give you some inspiration of what could happen. If any future park happens, there's going to be a whole new park planning process and a whole new master plan. This is really just trying to understand the extent of where the park boundary should be.
Kathy, you have a question?
Yeah, I just had a couple.
Sure.
So have the Native Americans been invited to in this? Are they speaking to their consultants?
Yeah, great question. This site is special to 5 tribes, the Yakima, Umatilla, Siletz, Warm Springs, and Grand Ronde. But these are the ceded lands of the Grand Ronde. We have reached out to all 5 tribes, and we've interacted with the other tribes to a certain degree, but Grand Ronde is very involved in this. We've gone down to the Grand Ronde Tribal Council at Grand Ronde, presented. They've had a couple Grand Ronde members we've done on a site tour, and they've actually been very gracious and offered off a lot of their tribal staff, their specialty staff, and we've met with their fish biologists. We took out their cultural resource specialist to the falls last week. They're very interested in this site. So, yeah, and so we've tried to keep really close cooperation with both the Grand Ronde, but all the other tribes who have special ties to the site.
Okay, and then I had another question.
Sure.
2 questions. You talked about cars going down to the site. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm almost driving to the falls, but where are they gonna park and turn around?
Oh, great question. That's what we're going to.
Where's the bottleneck?
Yeah,
Gonna stop?
that's where we're gonna show, because it is a bit of a conundrum, and there's not one solution. You can't build the world's greatest parking garage. You're going to have to come up with, this is how many people can walk there. This is how we're going to bike there. This is how we're going to get access. But, one thing we're looking at is, most likely there's going to be some turnaround roundabout. And now that we're seeing maybe an opportunity for this park, so I'm kind of going a little ahead, but what we're seeing is you're coming down, you have a little bit of a turnaround. Some people have been to Millennium Plaza in Lake Oswego, kind of get that feeling of how they,
Seaside.
yeah, and Seaside, how they do that. It's a turnaround that goes right to the park, and then you can, where we're seeing the best opportunity for parking garages are along the area behind the historic buildings, but right next to the Union Pacific line. And so what we have, GBD Architects, they're out of Portland. They actually have done a lot of adaptive reuse, and they did the brewery blocks. They're doing some numbers and trying to give us some best direction of how we move forward to look at parking. It probably is going to be done in different stages, so how can they maybe work together? So they're looking at kind of penciling that out. But we're probably going to see most available parking more towards that bluff, buffering the rail line.
And then my last question is the flooding. You got the map up there, and that little round thing, the flooding
The clarifier?
goes right over,
Yeah. Well, that's where
the whole thing is
Yeah.
going to get flooded.
Yeah.
I've seen it. I've been around
Right. And-
all my life in Oregon.
and
Well, and the thing of it is it's the maintenance of the parks after the flood. It's how high is it going to be, and maintenance of the walkway that's going to get flooded, and how safe it will be after a flood. So that's a lot of money, and is it going to be put on the taxpayers constantly?
those are all great questions. And what I can tell you is we are talking to consultants who do public waterfronts that are in the floodplain. So we have best practices. We're not designing the park this year, but we're giving parameters, and those are absolutely going to be part of the analysis when we move forward with the actual master planning of the park.
Okay, thank you.
Paul?
Thank you. In this flying very high up and looking down, I'm concerned about the transportation sides and what are your estimates? What are the numbers are we talking about in the types of visitors that might be coming into Oregon City if we reach full potential?
Right. Well, there's I'm going to have to break it up into two, because I think the best way to look at this is first, what do we think, and I'm more of a traditional plannerese of what's our highest expectation of square footage on the property, and kind of what would be the parking and or transportation demand. So you kind of try to understand the development. And what GBD is looking at, the architecture firm, is their planning of how do we do structured parking. And this, once again, for a market that's not there yet, so we can't plan on 2013's market because we can't afford structured parking in Oregon City. But the only way this is going to happen is if we do more structured parking. But how can these existing redevelopment parcels kind of park for themselves, either through structured or shared parking? And then, you're right, once we understand that, how do we put the overlay of this open space? And that's what we're doing right now. First, we're getting this understanding of kind of working with the Oregon Department of Transportation, trying to understand our transportation requirements for the rezone. Generally, where are we going to be parking the development we have, and how was each development? But as you know, like a lot of things, structured parking is expensive, so it's either you don't do anything or you do it to its extent where it becomes financially feasible. But then it's looking at how do we look at visitor, and what you've brought up is exactly what we're trying to figure out, and what we're doing now is trying to come up with our best case, and we're probably going to have different scenarios of, if it builds out this way, this is a scenario where it could happen. If it builds out this way, this is another scenario, because once again, we have to create enough flexibility that we don't pin ourselves down to one scenario. If it changes, it becomes more dense or less dense, or the park gets bigger, we have to have a better understanding of these different scenarios at the framework level.
I'm just concerned about just raw access into Oregon City to make sure that if we're talking about like 50,000 visitors, in a time frame, and we know that there's peaks and valleys to it, but all of a sudden we have this crush of people coming in just because they bit the lure. They said, I want to see what this beautiful site really looks like, and they start pouring in.
Absolutely. So, you go back to some truisms that you have, which is, I always say, Andres Dewani has a great quote, he's an architect, which is, any place worth its salt has a parking problem. We are never going to be able to park for that festival or that big day, just like you don't park for Christmas Eve if you're a mall. We're going to have to find a way to address the day-to-day parking needs of the park visitor. And we have this park we also need to make sure that this park is programmed for all 4 seasons. So we have to have a level of economic development right next door. Because one thing we don't want to have is this amazing park and people show up July and August and September because that's the only time they want to go out. And ironically, that's the time when we have no waterfall. So we want people to come out in February when it's raining and the waterfall's amazing, but we've got to have economic development for them to go to. They need to go eat at a restaurant or go to a coffee shop, or maybe they have an office there. So we need to have that balance of economic redevelopment to really make this a 4-season destination, or it won't be successful.
We just have so much limitations, and I'm hoping that you're visioning out how we're going to achieve some capacity, so we don't have artificial constraints that prevents us from reaching that wonderful world.
Right. I mean, we're going to use the best practices we have, but I won't lie to you. This is a constrained site. Oregon City downtown's constrained, and I think. One of what I've heard from a lot of people, and I've heard from Tom Meyer, is you use your best practices. You have this amazing thing. You are flexible, and you react as you move on in the process. And we don't have the space to have a low density development with lots of parking lots. So if we know we can't do that, what is the solution that gives us the product we want? And that's what we're trying to figure out.
Thanks. Bob?
You mentioned earlier that there's some people around that don't even know about Willamette Falls. That's kind of hard to believe, but I'm sure it's true. What's being done to get the word out and possibly get more funding?
Yeah. Great question. I'm actually, as we move forward, I still am keeping a lot of eye on this process, but part of me is thinking, what about next year? We have a finite number our budget is finite for this year-long process, and we have a pretty robust, at least the most robust engagement project I've been on in Oregon City, and we're reaching out. We've had 45 community conversations, both in Oregon City and regional stakeholders. We have a partners group where we work with elected officials from both Clackamas County, the state of Oregon, and Metro to try to make them champions, because you want all your electeds to be long-term champions. We also are going out to all the advocacy groups, the Historic Preservation League of Oregon, now called Restore Oregon. We're going to environmental groups. They need to take this on as a championship. We are slowly this year trying to set the seeds for long-term champion building. And what you'll see is this strategy document, which is going to be the second document we're going to adopt. It's not going to be part of the master plan because it's too big picture and it's not related to really rezone. But you'll see your electeds adopt this secondary political and financial strategy document, which I kind of call the pretty book, with lots of recommendations for lobbying, be it that lobbying for political champions and lobbying for actual money for projects. And also it'll be some strategies for economic redevelopment opportunities, as well as strategies of what's the catalyst project we go through first, where do we put our energy. And then it has enough flexibility in this strategy document that if someone comes in or an entity comes in with money, that it has enough flexibility that we can go, all right, we're going to concentrate energy on that because the money's coming there and it fits within our grand scheme. So it's once again that flexibility. But that's going to happen. We're going to need to spend money not only this year, but the next 5 years continually building champions throughout the region and the state, because this project cannot happen until we make the rest of the state realize what a treasure this is and say, I want to be involved in it.
Is it the planning department that's spearheading this, or
Well, I'm the project manager, and the planning department is we're running the master plan in this project this year. We have staff from all of the agencies. We have Metro staff, Clackamas County staff, and some state staff, as well as our elected officials. So one of the next thing as we move forward this next year is what's year 2, or really I call this year 0. So what's year 1 going to be, and how are we going to spend our money, and how are we going to work on champion building and catalyst projects, and hopefully we have a property owner too as well. How we also, depending if we have a property owner, we may be a little different. If we're still trying to find a property owner, we may be putting all of our energy this next spring just saying, we rezone the property, reduce barriers for redevelopment, come be part of our amazing project. But if we already have a property owner, maybe we're already working on redevelopment goals, and then we're going down to Salem to look for money for a park. So it just depends what our next steps are.
Brian?
I had a couple things. There's a proposal out there. It's not just a proposal. They're actually doing it of a high-speed rail line, and there's a possibility of it going through Oregon City. We don't know yet. And has anybody looked at that as an issue around this redevelopment?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think with high-speed rail, and some of the people have the question of, do we want to move our existing rail depot to the site? And my only recommendation is absolutely, if that's something we feel that it makes sense in the long term, we can put that in our strategy document with enough flexibility that, we can move forward. It's always great to have policy statements already pre-adopted. So when money comes in, be like, well, we adopted this 6 years ago saying we love it. So, but also what would the size be? What would we need to know about? We're probably not going to get to the level of detail now of saying it's going here and it's this big, but you want to plant the seeds a little bit, but also if it doesn't go through, we don't want to put ourselves in a corner. Like, oh, that was our rail depot. Well, that's not going to work, so what are we going to do now? So once again, it's that flexibility and certainty balance.
Damon?
Yeah, I guess one thing that we need to kind of keep our head wrapped around is this is all private property. And if the right developer comes up and writes the check, he could conceivably make all that open spaces accessible only to the high-end condo people who are in the remodel, Paper Station 4 building. And we may not get access to the falls because he's only letting PGE people out on their own access way, or he's paying a fee to PGE to cover their insurance so that his people can go out and sit on the nice, beautiful sun deck and overlook the falls for their multi-million-dollar condos.
Which is why your forebears in 2004 wrote in a comprehensive plan that this had to go through a master plan process. And we do have some requirements through the master plan, especially the Willamette River Greenway, to require and actually exact public access to the falls and public access along the Willamette River. So we have some regulatory authority. Do we have the ability to have this giant park? Not maybe through the code, but we're working with the trustee and we're saying this open space actually adds value and will make redevelopment happen. At the end of the day, this property is still zoned industrial.
So if you wanted to put a dynamite factory in and it's an industrial use,
A flour mill.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that knowing the existing, and this is more of just the reality. I've been out there and knowing how much has changed and how much NRI has taken away. It is about as far away from turnkey industrial as you could possibly get. So I'm not saying there isn't, but it'd be really hard to fathom an industrial entity coming into this property when there's Greenfield Industrial and Wilsonville ready to go. So this is a really
the difference between Wilsonville and this is it has ready rail access.
It has ready rail, and that's it. That's it. So we can't foresee, but we are in a pretty good position. But once again, I always want to caution, we have to have that balance of flexibility and certainty, because if we create too certain of a vision, I really worry about the momentum of this project. If we create such a vision and we say we'll wait 10 years for that vision, in 10 years you may lose the state as a partner, you may lose Metro as a partner, so it's that balance of keeping the momentum and keeping that flexibility. But we aren't going to give carte blanche because you're not going to get the public champions that way.
And I guess the real emphasis of my point is you've got a lot of green up there. You've got roads kind of laid out. we don't necessarily have the right to expect that much green to be there. There are things that can be built, like the plot 3. It's a sloped area. Once all the buildings are cleared out, it's big, perfect spot for parking structure because it can drop down towards the river. And there's things like that so I was at the public process and back earlier in the month, and there was a lot of, this is going to be great. We're going to tear all these buildings down. It's going to go back to be the way it was, and the Native Americans are going to come build their platforms and they're going to fish. And we're all going to watch them from the little the station. And it's like, no, you could conceivably be able to go to a couple of outlet stores, and the rest of it is all pretty much locked away.
And that is the value of why I'm so happy we are doing this in conjunction with the trustee this year. We are out ahead. So the faster we can get this adopted, the more we are in control of the vision. And so that is why, I just see me in February, like, let's just get going, because I knew we told the story, we created the vision. We have to be showing added value, and that may not all be exacted. Some of that land may have to be purchased for the property owner. I'm not going to go down and speculate what is what, but we're working with the trustee on that. We're trying to add value. We're taking away the complicated pieces, and we're adding value to the yellow pieces, which are the easier pieces to redevelop.
Kathy, you have more?
Yeah, I just have 3 things,
Sure.
and then you can, however. Okay, if buildings are taken down, there is a 200-foot setback, correct? So a parking structure could not probably be built there if you don't leave something with the water.
Yeah, well, there's 2 things. You're looking at the Willamette River Greenway and the Natural Resource Overlay District. And in this case, this is a little wonky, but the Natural Resource Overlay District looks at impervious surface. This site is pretty much 100% impervious surface. So you can, if you have, right now in Oregon, if you have a parking lot and it's in a buffer, you can build a new building over that parking lot because there's no change in impervious surface. It was impervious and it is impervious now. But what you're getting with the public access, that's the Willamette River Greenway, which is a separate overlay code. That actually comes from Tom McCall. That starts from the early 70s. That is, how do we get kind of industry having total monopoly over the river, and how can Oregonians get access to the river? So it's a combination of both of those, and it's that third combination, which is working with the trustee and trying to find this value-added open space that actually, even though there may be open space taken, gives more value to the parcels that are developable. So it's a combination of all of those.
Okay. And then he was talking about the train site. If you move it, then we know from when they did the stop there that you had to have so many feet to stop that train at the speed they're going. So that would have to be taken into account if that's going to be doable.
Absolutely. I mean, all you're going to get from the strategy document is a general support for the idea.
Support.
We're not going to get any more detail from that.
And then the last thing is, I was talking about the flooding and cleaning up, and I'm thinking of all the wood, all the debris that gets in the lagoon when that happens, what sinks, how much sediment, and how are you going to keep that from being, how is it going to be paid for, and by whom, and all that.
The Laguna has, actually, that is where there's some environmental sediment, and, long time we may be looking at federal funds for that. You're also looking at working with PGE. The mill's been closed for 2 years, so some of their day-to-day activities have been, with cooperation with the mill, have not been as much. So, we're also looking at opening up the flow a little bit through the lagoon so that we have more circulation and some of that invasive plants are taken away. Absolutely. And how do we get kayakers in? There may be a slough that's built, like maybe not built, but like some type of flume that you can be in the Upper Kenema and you kind of get in as a kayak so you're not close to the waterfall. So these are all different further.
Frankly, having a toboggan run for the kayakers to go. I mean, they do it. You see them jumping off of waterfalls, so having the kayaks.
Kat, these are all issues that will be addressed at a further refined plan, but absolutely.
Thank you.
No one else? Thank you,
And
Christina.
thank you all very much, and please take the survey, and if you can, come to our December event. But 2 things that you can do. If you have not already, sign up to be on the biweekly e-blast. You can go on our website, right on the right-hand side. You can put your email address in, and we send a little e-blast about once every 2 weeks. If you're on a Facebook page, follow us on Facebook. You'll get all the photos a day, and you'll just get up-to-date access to where we are in the process.
Thank you.
Sure.
Next, we'd like to hear from our Public Works Director.
Right, I knew you're going to have a presenter tonight, so I don't have too much to go over. Wanted to give you a short update on the McLaughlin Boulevard enhancement project, which is McLaughlin Boulevard from the Clackamas River Bridge to Dunes Drive, and it includes a piece of Dunes Drive. It also includes Firestone Alley, mainly, well, what we call Firestone Alley. It's ODOT right away, but anyway, that project's still in the bid phase. We're expecting bids to open on November 14th, and I think you've all been involved or have at one point in time seen that project, so you know what it's all about. Sidewalks, some median treatments, landscaping, and just some architectural treatments, some new fencing, those kind of things. So that's moving as planned. Municipal elevator, if you haven't noticed, has got a new fresh coat of paint. It's got we think it looks very good. It's not yet, the painting's complete, but we still have some lettering and some lighting that's going to go on the tunnel entrance, and but looks very good. It's got a white barrel and silver observation deck, and it's got a unique look to it. So check it out. I attended the American Public Works Association conference last week, and at that conference we acknowledged our GIS group, David Knoll, Chris Dunlop, and Michael Pushke, for their efforts with regard to our GIS systems and our data management of our, right now the operations group, we're doing a lot of data management, just tracking the work that we're doing in a digital form, so it's a little bit easier to follow, tracking the work associated with a particular asset and tracking the hours associated with that work. So that's all kind of innovative stuff that most agencies our size have yet to kind of dabble in effectively, and we've become very effective with that. So if you're not used to using our online tools with reporting problems or maybe not problems, maybe just good news, feel free to do that. Our mapping is again, it's leading the way for agencies our size, just keeping it very simple to use. So most users that are familiar with what kind of options are out there are pretty impressed with the systems we have. So those 3 were acknowledged with an award, call it the Everyday Hero Award, and so I thought that was pretty cool. We collectively, the whole city was involved in the big shakeout exercise. I don't know if any of you participated in that, but we participated in that. It was an earthquake exercise, and all staff dealt with the get under your desk and find a secure place to go in the event of an earthquake. But the department heads and from police to planning, library, we all participated in this exercise and tested some of our ability to set up our incident command system. So we checked phone messages, we communicated with the county. I mean, it was a statewide, actually it was a national event, but we were communicating with the county through some of the electronic tools that they have. So it was a real good success story for us. We found some problems, and we'll continue to work through those. And it was I think it was a real good event. Having Martin Montalvo, our new operations manager, kind of help lead us through some of that emergency exercise activity was eye-opening and helpful. So look for more. The one thing that kind of came out of that was how this group, the Citizen Involvement Committee and or Commission, and the neighborhoods themselves. And I know you've dabbled in this a little bit already with working with trying to put phone trees, putting together information so your neighborhoods can be prepared prepared for an event like that. But taking that to a new level would be very helpful, and I really see it as a good use of time for this group. And I'm obviously not the chair, but it just seems like those kind of things are most successful when they're driven through from the community, and so keep that in mind. And then the only other thing I want to mention is we are making plans for December 7th holiday tree lighting down at the down near the courthouse down there, Liberty Plaza. Thank you, Damon. So last year that was under construction. It was a little bit challenging for us to kind of put on an event, but this year it's not under construction, so we'll have an event down there. We're going to do a little different thing with Santa this year, but it'll still be a good event, and we hope to have you there. So that's all I got.
Paul, you have a question for?
Yes, recently you helped to corral a kind of a stormwater Coffee Creek drainage problem where it was draining down, coming out of the bank and going down Hedges Street. And Eric Hand came in and apparently put a kind of a catch basin in. The dialogue I get is you're looking at the potential of opening up Coffee Creek and through that area. The Kenema Neighborhood Association would love to be part of the visioning of what Public Works is looking at as the eventual correction or plan for Coffee Creek as it comes off of over 3rd Avenue and through, and where do you plan to take it? And so as soon as you think you're in that position to kind of talk out some of that, we'd sure like to hear from you.
Okay, we can do that, Paul. That reminds me, one other thing that the city's looking at with regard to visioning is we've got a concept planning scope for Lynn Avenue up from 5th, so just up the hill here, Lynn Avenue on up to Leland, and then even a section of Myers Road. That's all kind of a corridor there that we're trying to, there's several needs along there, and I know those of you that live in those or use those areas are pretty familiar with that. The big challenge is just getting pedestrians, bicyclists up and down the hill, and then once they get there, there's several bottlenecks along that route. So that's another planning effort that we're moving forward, and it's actually a little further along, Paul, than the one that you're talking about. We do think there's a need there. Just trying to figure out how to move that one along has kind of become a challenge for us. But this Lynn project is a little moving along a little further. We've actually got a consultant scope, and we're probably going to take that to the City Commission fairly soon here, and be working with the neighborhoods to figure out how we can get. Well, some of those areas don't have, along that route, don't have sewer service, so figuring out how to get sewer in there, how to get our storm drainage right, so that we can then, build a boulevard that will accommodate pedestrians and bicyclists and vehicles. So, thanks for reminding me of that.
Do you have a question?
No, I just need help signing in.
I got you on there now, so you should be.
No, get me. Go for it.
No, if your name's there, you just, there, you got it.
Okay. Any other questions for John? Okay, thank you. Now we'd like to hear from the Chamber of Commerce. Amber?
All right, folks. So this is my first time doing the chamber update as a non-voting member. And so I don't know, I'm going to take just a little bit of time to provide a little bit of education about the Oregon City Chamber of Commerce, just to make sure that we're all talking about the same organization. And first of all, the Chamber is definitely a partner with the City of Oregon City, but we are not an agency. There's no governmental funds that come our way. There's a little bit of grant funding, but it follows a course of application process, interview process, the whole 9 yards. We are a membership organization, and our members are businesses, our members are nonprofit organizations, and our we also have agencies who, like the City of Oregon City, Clackamas County, Clackamas Fire District, so on and so forth. And our funding comes from our members based on member dues. sponsors who decide they want the elevated amount of exposure to other members or to the community as a whole, as well as ad sales and putting on events. And I'm sure you've heard of the Chamber putting on events before. Let's see. Our mission is working together to promote the economic vitality and quality of life in the Oregon City community. So you can start to see some themes: economic growth, economic development, vitality, and quality of life, and put it all in one nice big bundle as the community. And so that's why the Chamber, as a part of this body, I think is an important connection piece, that community part that we all share in common. That's why when we have, we all grieve when we have tragedies like Oregon City's experienced, the Chamber's right there with you all the way along. And it's important that everybody sees and knows that as a partner within the community, we all feel it. We have a few guiding principles, things that help kind of drive or keep us focused. Again, helping build a strong local economy, connecting and educating customers with our businesses. That's how the effort of Buy Local Oregon City came to be. So we're trying to make sure that our consumers right here in Oregon City know that if you spend your dollars right here, they're going to stay here longer, and they're going to benefit more folks from your own community. And who is it? Our small businesses are the ones that time and time and time again are coming up to say, yes, we will help sponsor your Little League. And so every time we can spend those dollars locally, it's going to benefit our local community. We are into promoting Oregon City. So projects like this tie in so well with building a strong economy for Oregon City and promoting Oregon City. Those are big ones. And then the fourth guiding principle, advocating on behalf of business. Sometimes these kinds of projects relate to that as well. And when a business needs a little bit of assistance, whether it's in front of the City Commission or Historic Review Board or what have you, the Chamber can help be an advocate for them. And business folks, like each one of you, you're super, super busy. And so you may not have time, all of the time, to look after those little nuts and bolts of what might be happening with a committee or a task force. But the Chamber can go ahead and provide that go-between. We are at 270 individual members here in the Oregon City Chamber, and over 300 when you consider the various group members that we have. Let's see, we provide great networking for our businesses so that they can develop those relationships one-on-one, provide promotion and marketing opportunities, involvement with the community, and then the advocacy piece. Now, for the rest of the community, we give away lots of maps. We give away a lot of driving directions. I'm lost. I can't find Red Soils Court, county buildings. We provide a lifestyle magazine and business directory called the Oregon City Around Town magazine. Relocation requests. Lots of times we will be the ones that will help to guide people considering Oregon City for their new home. So we want to connect them with our local real estate agents. We need to be in touch with our schools to have a really good handle on our schools, because people who are relocating, they're often concerned about schools, so they want to have that inside story. Let's see. We help with charitable efforts. It's coming to the time of year when our Chamber staff receive, unfortunately, a number of calls about my family and I were having a really, really tough fall. Is there anybody that can help us with a Thanksgiving basket? And so we help to guide and direct those folks to the agencies that can help them. And then we help to entertain people. Things to do. We've got relatives coming out. We have an exchange student. We're here for the weekend. What should we do in town? So we help to kind of build kind of an activity schedule for what they might do and try to show off the best things that we have available here in Oregon City. And those things keep growing, folks. The things in Oregon City, the things to do, the things to see, the things to be part of, they're growing. And then we do put on, like I said, events. And in fact, I have a great event coming up that I'd like to share with you. Ladies, these are yours. And then Eileen, if you could sort those around. Every few years we will host a State of the Schools luncheon. And this year it will be on Tuesday, November 26th. And it features Clackamas Community College President Joanne Truesdell and Oregon City Schools Superintendent Larry Didway. And these are our two power players in our local education. And the business community knows how important it is that education and business work side by side. Because if we don't have a solid education system, where is our workforce coming from? And so that's why business has to look out for that educational component. And then schools, too, count a lot on our community, on how the economy is going, the property taxes, income taxes. You see how those pieces are so interconnected. And so we want to make sure that everyone has access to that kind of information. And we're just so pleased to host this event with Joanne Truesdell and Larry Didway. You all are invited. It's not limited to the chamber, and I'd love to have you be part of it. That was plenty of talking. Questions? I can't help you with roads. I can't help you fix streets, but I know who can. And
he's right there.
From there, any questions?
Tom has some questions or comments, I believe.
Yes, hi, Amber. Thank you very much for the report. It does us a lot of good to hear what all the chamber is involved in. One of the things I would like to ask you, though, is if we have 270 members, individual members, and I realize not all of them live in Oregon City, but even if half of them do, would it be helpful to the chamber from an exposure perspective if those 135 were to attend their own neighborhood association meetings? I think one-on-one you have a better opportunity of getting comfortable, shall I say, with the chamber if you're dealing with someone on a little more localized level. Now, we don't happen to have any businesses in our neighborhood. We're probably unique in that regard. However, I do believe there are some people who are members who really live within the confines of our neighborhood. And I'd like to see them come and introduce themselves, tell us what their business activity is. Maybe our neighborhood could support their business. Anything we can do in this city to support our businesses, I think it helps us all in the long term. So those are just my comments, and I'd love to have the opportunity to work with you to develop that idea or thought.
You know, those are very good comments, and that is actually something that I've played through in my own head, trying to look at how do we take that to that next step of that individual, that closer connection. And I know that what I will hear from a lot of folks is they're time poor. And that's not unlike everybody else here, absolutely. So maybe it's something that we can look at in terms of having, maybe we should have some of you.
Most of us only have 4 meetings a year, even if they only made it to 2 out of the 4.
Very good. I was going to say, there isn't any reason why we can't do this both ways. And maybe at some point, one or a couple of you would like to come to a Good Morning Oregon City and say, we would love to interact with our businesses in our neighborhood. Give us ideas. What will it take to make that connection? Because I think that's a super idea, and it builds a safer neighborhood. By far a safer neighborhood. So I think that's really worth consideration. And any ideas you folks have, bring them on.
Bob?
How are you coming on the new maps?
That was going to be my question.
I'm sorry I asked.
Bob, I looked at the minutes, the draft minutes, that said, oh yeah, we should have them ready in about 2 weeks. Well, we had a visit from our map and magazine publisher, and they're I was going to say a wee bit behind. Significantly behind is probably more correct. I would love to say that they're ready yesterday, but unfortunately, Karen and I don't have the skills of creating these monstrous maps, and so we're just going to have to trust and know that they are being developed.
Okay. Paul?
Amber, many of us have I had over 20 years in chamber, heavily involved in the chamber activities in my past. Yet at the same time, is there a way that we could have or gain some type of membership where CIC or where many of us are, I'm a retired person, business person, but it's not like that I don't care and I don't have significant knowledge about building businesses, and it just seems as if we don't have. I asked one time about it.
I have your question answered right here.
Okay.
It's called a membership application, and there's a citizen membership category where you do not have to have any specific affiliation. So talk to me afterwards.
Years ago, that wasn't possible. Thank you.
Now it is.
Steve?
In answer to Tom, as far as inviting businesses, a business doesn't necessarily mean a storefront.
No.
We have dozens of cottage industry business in our neighborhoods.
Absolutely.
And most of the people that do that are actually residents there at their work. And those would be wonderful people to include into our neighborhood meetings.
Well, and actually, there's quite a few of those folks that I probably have never had the opportunity to meet. And so there's even greater value to try to get those folks connected at that local neighborhood association level. There's a lot more strength. I mean, there's something to be said. There's a lot more strength in numbers. And I think that goes for your neighborhood associations. Can you imagine how vibrant your meetings would be? I know what you all would like to, at least I think I know what you would all like to see and experience. And there's something to be said for the life of a group that's growing, and especially that connection between citizens and business, and how can we each help each other. And let's see what we can do. We're going to have to really think about what the ways are to really pull folks in, and let's do a little bit of thinking, brainstorming.
Faith?
Yeah, well, I had a question. When we mail out our postcards that go out to all the households, do they go to the businesses too?
And that was a question, Katie, at the last meeting. We didn't know if it was being mailed to households or if it was every address.
I think it's households, but I can check the mailing list. I know that just recently, let me see if I can find the mailing
we have a lot of
Ours
businesses
is
in
to
ours.
every address.
Yeah, and Katie, the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association newsletter comes to the bookstore.
Oh, it does?
So I know-
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
I'm not sure about
So
some of
it's
the
every
other neighborhoods,
address.
but I know McLaughlin does.
What about the Historical Society? What about the Historical Society?
Yeah, we get the McLaughlin neighborhood there too, and the chamber gets all of them.
Because the chamber requested to be on all the lists.
What I was going to say is there isn't any reason why in the near future we can't work on some intra-chamber communications that say there's a real value to connecting with your local neighborhood association. Check it out.
Push them a little bit from your side.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe I can get a little bit of help from OCPD, like someone like Chris Wadsworth to say, yeah, we've seen, decrease in burglaries or those kinds of things when there's a better connectivity, neighborhood watch looking out for their businesses too.
Katie?
Also, the Caulfield neighborhood, I don't know if anybody else does this, but I know that the Caulfield neighborhood invites a business to sponsor them. They have a business of the month each time they have one of their meetings, and they actually post it on their postcard. They invite them to come to their meeting and give a little ditty about their business and their hours and give out information, and then they also maybe bring some treats or something to refreshments to serve. So it might be something that other neighborhood associations might consider doing.
Amber, would you like someone of our group to work with you on developing some ideas on how to connect with the neighborhood associations?
I would, but I would
Time.
maybe wait until, I'm thinking first of the year.
Yeah, after the holidays.
Let's pass by this.
Will you remind us if we forget? Because I think it's a wonderful idea.
Yes.
John has some comments.
Well, I just wanted to say, I mentioned it earlier, but this emergency planning that can happen at a residential level, I mean, it's just as important at a business level. So again, if the CIC were sponsoring an active program to garner support for an emergency response program, then maybe that would be an inroads that might be seen as a benefit by the businesses as well. I don't know. That's just...
Yeah, that is a good starting point. Bob?
I solicited door prizes for our meeting from outside of the Park Place area. And in every case, the businesses that I visited knew about your neighborhood associations. They didn't know exactly which one they belonged to, but they knew that they existed. So that's a positive there.
Anyone else before we let?
Oh, I did want to just add one of the. I'm going to say it was probably the most exciting field trip I've taken since I went with my son on the Willamette Jet Boat. Oh no, it was my daughter, Willamette Jet Boats tour. Was touring the Willamette Falls Legacy Project, going out to that observation platform that Christina mentioned. It was absolutely awe-inspiring. I have never seen a group of adults turn into a group of school children faster. It was amazing. Smiles all the way along, some giggles, just, ooh, can you feel the spray? And it absolutely is captivating. And so anything and everything we can do to help keep that moving along and the enthusiasm, we have to do. And I can guarantee you the Oregon City Chamber will be right there.
Who do we contact to
Thanks,
do that?
Amber. That was a great report. Keep it up.
Christina Robinson Gardner, and I can send you her information. I can give you her card.
Okay. That sounds like
Or we can set up some sort of a tour too.
Yeah.
Next on our agenda would be the approval of last meeting's minutes.
Move approval.
Second?
Okay, who moved? Damon?
Steve.
Bob seconded. Do we have any discussion?
Just that I need to fix the spelling of Barbara Rankin's last name.
Okay, let's go ahead and call the vote. Tony?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Tom?
Abstain.
Steve?
Yes.
Faith?
Yes.
Damon,
Aye.
Alice,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Barbara,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
Ingra,
Yes.
Marianne,
Yes.
Todd,
Abstain.
Brian,
Yes.
Kimberly.
Yes.
Yeah, and that passes with 2 abstentions.
Okay, the next item is unfinished business, and I don't have anything that I was going to bring forward. Do any of you have anything that we've discussed in the past that you want to bring up again? Amy says no.
No.
Well, there's this matter of elections.
Well, I did print out hard copies of the
bylaws?
Yeah, so they're in the
Okay.
back. So please pick one up before you leave if you need a hard copy, even though I did email it out as well.
Okay, thank you. And under new business? No one came forward to me with anything, and I don't have anything that I wanted to bring up tonight, so.
Would like to go to the line item you have here on here, 6C.
I don't have a 6C.
Well, it was on, well, I guess from last, and this is to talk about Jim Nacita, a presentation.
Okay, we can talk about that. Jim was here, well, you were here, weren't you, Paul? Jim came and
Yes.
asked for some time to request a future date for presentation of transparency in city government. And Damon gave him some ideas on ways to approach that. We did have some other conversation, and he went away and is working on that presentation right now. Executive Board, which consists of Michael Berman, Amy Wilhite, and myself, are going to meet with him and make sure that what he plans to present for discussion will fit within the parameters of our regular meeting. So it's probably going to happen in December.
I would like to see it happen. I just think democracy is improved by greater participation and greater transparency. And in the long haul, this is a win-win. And whenever we can talk it out, have it all out in the open, I think that's very, very positive.
Right. Yes, he got a lot of positive response.
I have
on
seen
it.
the draft that he's prepared. I think it's warrants our review and listening and just our discussion.
Right.
I think that the discussion is going to be very important.
Well, the challenge that we're going to have is making it fit within the time constraints that we have in our meeting. And I have talked to Jim a couple of times to suggest ways that we can get to the heart of the matter quickly and without a lot of superfluous talk, and then move forward with some suggestions and ideas and come up with what we feel is the direction we'd like to recommend at some other level. But right now, we're just working out the details. Because I don't want it to take all evening. I like to respect everybody's time, and I don't want us to be repeating ourselves time and time again. And, I feel that once you've said something, if we're all in agreement, we don't need to say it again and hash it over again. I'd like to make it be a concise and cohesive discussion. So, Steve?
Yeah, several of us have been working at various outside contact activities like the farmers market and this sort of thing, promoting the CIC in our neighborhoods. And I think we've all made comment about the signage of that is attached to the tent and all that. I think it's really important that if we're out there in public, that people can readily see who we are, who we represent, and we have a method of signage that's easy to transport, easy to install on whatever surface it is that we're working with. And maybe we can work towards an end on that.
Okay. Great. Kathy?
Okay, yeah, on the Jim Nacita thing, after you guys have looked at it, the three of you, if it looks appropriate in your estimation or whatever, wouldn't it expedite if you sent us what he's got so that we could have everything written down for our questions?
Yes, precisely, Kathy, and that's what I suggested to him initially.
Okay.
And we will talk about that again.
Yeah.
I don't want it to be all new so that we have 10 zillion questions the night he
Yeah.
presents it. I want
Yeah.
everyone to have an opportunity to think about it and come with
Have-
thoughtful
with it.
questions and discussion so
Yeah.
that we're not really wasting a lot of time.
And actually, I came up with questions that I didn't ask any of the other things or put in the survey when I listened to Christine. And then I listened to somebody else say about the train and then something like this. So I think that both methods could work if we're all calm.
Right, right. Amy?
Oh, I just wanted to say for Steve, if you have some recommendations, since you spent time and maybe Faith about the signage, that would be a great thing to send to us. Some, yeah, we said it was a great idea, but in order for anything to happen, we need some ideas, or it's just a great idea. You know how that goes. And next month we'll say it again.
Let me write up some stuff and send it to Katie.
Yeah, that would be helpful. And then, just as a reminder with this Jim Nacita thing, remember the mission and the value and the goals that we have as the CIC. Remember that what is relevant for the CIC. Remember that we don't make decisions, and just remember that in your thoughts as you're saying that you want to hear presentations, and what really is relevant here and what is just complaining and griping.
Just one last thing. I've been trying to monitor the passenger rail activity, and I sent you off a little report done by a professional engineer of rail engineering. It's interesting that after attending many of these meetings and trying to understand it, it wasn't until I had a private meeting with this gentleman that I finally dissected where my mind was going and where some of the facts were going. And sometimes we have to kind of rehash some of this down. And briefly, what came out of that was that there's really two separate things which we're talking about in passenger rail. One is very hyper-visionary, and one is the reality that we're trying to achieve just with the train sets and the worlds which we have. And the study is pulling them all together and confusing the issue. And I think that maybe one of the things we should be talking about is and I think it's like what Brian said, there's an opportunity. And we should really maybe take a serious look at it as this group as to how does passenger rail affect this community, and how could it possibly? So we understand it, and if we can kind of, in a sense, quantify it. And I think that it would be something because, as this Gerald Fox said, one of the first things we need to do is build a market. And what greater place could we have to market than our legacy Willamette Falls project, and bringing people in by passenger rail and letting them really take a look at this great marvel. And it's a kind of this win-win. And
well, it's not just our community that's affected by it. Some of the other communities that it would go through have varied degrees of interest in it as well, and some of them don't want it at all.
Yes,
so it has to be a community-wide decision to go forward. It requires a lot of planning.
We have, obviously, we know that there's a Union Pacific tracks, and in our case, they're in our backyard.
Right.
And so I think we should really take a really serious look at kind of thinking through this whole thing and in getting it out, because the more we've been bouncing it around, the more I find out that there's more diversity of thought and more opportunity of thought, and I think that the more we get it out in the open, the better off we all will be, because we really all want to just have it a win-win.
Right. And that's the key, is working together with the other communities that will be affected. John?
Paul just keeps reminding me of things and the things that I should have mentioned, so thank you, Paul, again for that. So the open house, which sounds like maybe you might have emailed around, is on the 12th. And I think it starts at 4, and it's over at the Pioneer Community Center. And Paul, I don't think you meant this, but what I heard from you is that group has confused the issue. I don't think they've confused the issue. I think they're working through a lot of confusing issues and trying to come up with some answers, and it's very conceptual as well. So anyway, I think they've got a great website too, and I think it's OregonPassengerRail.org, or if you Google Oregon Passenger Rail, you'll get there. So they got a pretty dynamic website, and then I think these open houses that they've been having have been good. But you're right, Oregon City is one of the main routes. As you get into the Portland area, there's not very many options, and the options that they had required deep tunneling, long tunneling, the kind of things that wouldn't happen. So yeah, Oregon City's kind of right in the heart of that when it gets to the metro area. So it'd be good for you to show up for that. And I think they'd appreciate a good showing from Oregon City as well. So and yeah, please go there.
Okay, next are our committee reports. I'm not sure that we have any. Do we have a report from Todd on public safety, Chiefs Advisory?
Sure, I can. I'd have a longer report. I grabbed the wrong folder when I left tonight. But I think I just have to say how impressed I am with Chief Band. He's really has an interest in the community along with law enforcement. And I think we're going to see a lot of real positive things going on. One thing that I think is of interest to the group here is that they did hire a traffic enforcement officer. And the chief made a big point to talk about the goal of the traffic enforcement officer is for safety reasons and not to be, you mentioned other communities in our area that are very tight about enforcing the traffic laws, and as a consequence, the public opinion of the police force has suffered. So he's very aware of that. He wants to balance the need to keep our community safe and not and do it in a positive way. So that was very nice to hear. They talked about the the night out was a huge success, and they were very excited about that. And I think that was the other thing that it's actually kind of sad in light of the current happenings. But he did hand out a sheet that showed that the crime statistics in Oregon City are actually very low in comparison with surrounding areas, with the exception of traffic accidents. And I have that information I can pass on. I'll send it to Katie, and she can pass it on. And that's about it.
Thanks, Todd. Land use, Paul, do you have anything? Okay. Transportation, Bob?
The Transportation Advisory Committee did not have a meeting in October, so I don't have anything to report on that. But I would like to emphasize that if any of the neighborhoods have traffic problems or concerns or whatever, to organize and come to the Transportation Advisory Committee, because we do really get things done. We've been able to improve the safety of some neighborhoods, and we listen to everybody.
What would it take to get on their agenda then?
John?
An email?
Okay.
And then if your
But
neighborhood does have
I would
an
imagine
issue,
it would have to
if
be a
you
couple
could-
of weeks before the meeting so that you could.
Well, true. But
Yeah,
we're
okay.
pretty responsive to that as well. And
Okay.
actually, if you really want it, come to the meeting, and we'll listen to you. May not give you answers, but you can just show up,
When's the
unannounced
next
for that
meeting?
matter. The next meeting is, well, we meet it's the third Tuesday of the month. So what is that? I'd have to look at my calendar. but- So
Right.
third Tuesday of the month.
19th of November.
19th of November. And we start our meetings at 6 in here.
Bob, I interrupted you. I'm sorry. I don't think you were quite
You
done.
can interrupt me anytime. That's all I had.
Really?
Well, yeah, I mean, just
Okay.
bring the issues to TAC.
Okay, Kathy.
Because that's our mission.
Yeah, Kathy has a comment, I think.
Well, yeah, I didn't know what portion of that is brought in. But Central Point, we have the tree cutter people, whatever, that come around. Is it Yes, and they're cutting the trees, and they have funny shapes now because the power lines will not get knocked down on my street for a certain period or point because they are cutting, and they're really trimming them up. I mean, they are getting all kinds of shapes. And actually, on Central Point Road in Hazel Grove, Wrestling Farm, only in the first portion from Partlow to probably the entrance, they have taken the street trees out. They have done the sidewalk because they have so many trees and stuff on the other side that will not damage, and is enough trees there that they've said, okay, it's when they were real small. And it is so much better to walk without that tree. And why, can you tell me, do you put a street tree where the power lines are and you have to come back and cut it and make it look like like yeah, I just don't get it.
That's easy. It's the public right-of-way. There's that one narrow 3-foot wide strip where all the telephone poles have to go and all the power pole and all the trees and all the fire hydrants and all the gas mains.
But is that really smart and efficient?
I didn't say that. I just said that's where they are.
Okay, I was just
As Mr. Code here, Mr. Code, correct that.
I mean, now new developments require to put all those utilities underground. So, I mean, Central Point has obviously been around for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
I can't defend those trees on Central Point Road. That's all.
Okay, let's do our round table. You want to start us, Ingra?
I'll pass.
Okay. Marianne?
We had our last meeting on October 17th, and our speaker was David Frazier, so he answered a lot of questions, and we had attendance of 13, and our next meeting is not until January.
Okay, thank you. Amber, did you have anything more?
I'm so glad you asked. Just recently, the group Oregon City Together got back together. Who remembers hearing about Oregon City Together? Anyone? Okay, a few of us. It's a coalition of various groups with the tagline, Building Opportunities for a Healthy and Drug-Free Future. And so there are key components to this coalition here in Oregon City. And we're using, I don't know if it's a national model, but I know that there's similar models where there's a component from the faith-based community, from the business community, the education community, the health community, law enforcement, I believe neighborhoods, community members, so on and so forth. And actually, Oregon City Together was given a significant grant to start moving the program forward here in Oregon City. So if it's of interest to our CIC, I would propose that in the future, in 2014, that we might invite, I think it's Elizabeth Russell, to come and speak about Oregon City Together and what it means for our community.
Okay.
I see some nods.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, great.
Good suggestion, thank you.
You're welcome.
Faith, do you have anything?
Well, I'll probably let Steve tell about our last meeting. I mean, we elected officers, and I guess everybody did, right? Okay, so that's not a big deal. But we had the police report and stuff at our meeting. We had like 9 members at the last meeting this past month, and then we'll meet again in January. And tomorrow night is our board meets at 7 o'clock. But I just wanted to stress to everyone, thank the people that showed up, like Barbara and Bob has, and Steve and Paul, when we did the Saturday market and then the health fair. But I really think that we reached out and touched some people that people get frustrated and think there's nothing they can do and nobody's listening to them, and that they're, in a democracy, sometimes they vote and they don't think it's, but they don't think their voice is being heard. And I felt like a lot of people felt like, well, this is maybe some place where somebody's at least listening. So it was a good outreach, and I hope we can do it next spring and do it at least once a month or once every other month. All you need is a couple of people and a canopy and a good sign, and you're there.
Diane, anything to share?
Yes, Rivercrest had our last meeting October 17th, where we elected new officers. Yay! Our new chairman is Harris Gwynn, and the co-chair is Karen Morey. Secretary is Amy Mueller, and her husband Simon consented to be the treasurer. So we have some new officers, and the steering committee members have. We are going to stay on for at least 6 months until they kind of get where they're going and what they're going to do, and along that time we'll elect, or maybe not elect, we will accept new steering committee members. So hopefully we'll get some new blood in there and younger people. And our neighborhood, though, it's a pretty it's a very stable neighborhood for the most part, and we have no burning issues, and it's hard to get people all revved up about it.
Yeah.
I think the biggest issue, the hottest topic, was about 4 or 5 years ago when Clearwire wanted to put up a cell tower on the corner, right there on the corner of Park and Cherry. And boy, did the neighbors come out like rabid wolves. And but that was about the last thing. But it's new neighbors, new blood. We'll see.
That's
We're
exciting.
really hopeful.
Yeah, good for you. Katie, anything?
I do. I just wanted to let you guys know, like I did the last time, that the revisions or the updates to the CIC bylaws will be coming before the City Commission again at the November work session. So that will be on November 12th, Tuesday, November 12th. It will be an item on the agenda, and they'll be reviewing those. And last time we had a couple members come, which was great. So again, we invite you.
John? Bob?
I don't have anything.
Amy?
I talk about somebody getting giddy. We had 21 people come to our Gaffney Lane meeting this month, October's month. It was so exciting. It was so exciting. We had, and some of I asked. I went around and how did they hear? And it was from the postcards. So, hey.
Yeah, right.
We had Jackie came to talk to us from the farmers market, and I have some extra little things if you guys haven't had her talk or you don't have these. Just reminding about the winter market, because they have a lot of people come to the summer, but in the winter, and they have a lot of vendors that want to come, but you can only have, you got to have your ratio right. So she asked that I would pass these out if anybody wants, just to find out when those are. And then we had, what was the other thing I wanted to talk about? Oh, the police liaison. We had come and talked about a situation that had happened in our neighborhood. We actually had the resident from that house came, and I was very excited to see her there. She didn't. She's on the happy side of the incident, not the bad side of the incident, but it was just nice to see her come to want to she didn't need to make a statement or anything, but it was just great to have her come and have the police come and talk. If you want to get people involved, get them going with the police. That gets them talking. So I was just very excited about that.
Okay. Just a couple of things. Since we are televised, I wanted to mention this again. The Officer Robert Libke Fund can be contributed to at any branch of Clackamas Federal Credit Union. Donations are to the Clackamas County Peace Officers Benevolent Foundation into the Officer Robert Libke Fund. Or you can mail a donation to the Clackamas County Peace Officers Benevolent Foundation. and make checks payable to CCPOBF, which stands for Clackamas County Peace Officers Benevolent Fund. I didn't say that earlier when I mentioned it when we opened our meeting, and any cards or notes with best wishes will be forwarded to the family. And then secondly, I just wanted to mention my thoughts on top of Faith's in regard to the farmers market and our outreach there. There has been some discussion at city level of the relevancy of this organization, and when we were at the farmers market talking to citizens all over the city, some from out of town even would come and talk to us that didn't even live here, but primarily what I heard people saying was, why should I get involved? I can't do anything. I'm just one person. No one ever listens to me. They don't care. And so what we did as an outreach was to try to convince them that this is the grassroots level for you to get your feet wet, and get involved. And oftentimes, if you have an issue and you bring it to your neighborhood association, you might be surprised that that issue is also a concern to others, and you can make a difference. It's just taking that first step and getting to know your neighbors and working with them at the grassroots level. And so we did this very effectively, I feel. Faith has a number of people she spoke with at the safety fair. We spoke to 38 more people that live in this area at the last farmers market we attended, and it is not a waste of time. We are relevant, and we are doing what we can to spread the word for citizen involvement.
I'm going to let Kathy talk about our meeting, but I did want to go on record to explain why I was tardy tonight. Unfortunately, there was an overlap of meetings. The Citizens Action Team for the South End Concept Plan was meeting from 6 until 7:30, and I left there early so that I could be here late.
I also wanted to support the concept of the Willamette Falls project. I went to the tour, and when we got out to the end of the ramp at the PGE, here was this rainbow. It was just amazing to see a rainbow, but it wasn't raining. You know, it was very unusual. On our local level, we had our quarterly meeting, and we had a pretty good turnout. Jackie came, the police liaison came, and lots of prizes, and we had some new people there, so that was encouraging. We have a lot of new possible development in our Park Place neighborhood, so there's a little more enthusiasm now, interest anyway, some for and some against, of course. I was surprised at the market, at the market that we had our booth, at the number of young families that live outside the UGB. That really surprised me, with young children, because they're way out there. But the positive part of that was that we were able to connect them to their closest, what neighborhood would you be closest to? And so they found themselves on the map, and so a new map will be nice. But that's all I have. Kathy?
We had our meeting October 17th. I have to say it was my mother's 93rd birthday. Thank God she didn't go because she's on hospice. So it was nice that she didn't go that day. Anyway, we had approximately 30 people. We had a really good meeting. We had Chris Wadsworth came because our police officer had a sick child. And she gave us a lot of update and had a sheet on crime and all other things that were happening in Oregon City, which I'm glad I left. We'll think of other positive things we need to. And we had 2 land use issues. The one with zone change is not making anybody happy. They would rather have R8 than R6 because of the constraints of coming out on Central Point Road and the traffic. And the other one, there were some didn't have the concept of what a cell tower is going to do in John McLaughlin right behind the school, that if it fell, it's 75 foot, some of it's going to go onto the building. So that's still an issue that, along with the land use issue that was talked about a lot. And our next meeting will be in January, correct? And Jackie's going to come give a 5-minute talk, and we're going to do...
BCT.
Pardon?
BCT.
BCT. Oh, that's right. Dick's coming.
And
From Beaver Creek Telephone.
And we're going to follow John's advice and talk once again about emergency preparedness.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about emergency preparedness again. So trying to get people interested in doing that.
Okay.
And that's it.
Thank you, Paul.
Kenema Neighborhood Association is going to have their we've long overdue meeting November 21st, 7 p.m. at South End Road Fire Station. And I've got to get Katie the final info so we can get the cards out. But we have all I want to be just as good as you guys are doing in getting all of this big attendance. So we have a real small neighborhood, but I think that we have as many opportunities as anyone else to delve through them, wait them out, and try to come up with right solutions. And hopefully everybody that wants to come and listen and watch or has care about the historic district of Kenema, come. We'd like to hear. You can. You're sure invited. Thank you.
Steve?
Hill and Dale, and we are holding our steering committee meeting tomorrow night, 6:30 at Casa Ixtapa, which is in the Danielson complex, where Safeway is. Again, that's 6:30. In our last general meeting, we also had land use issues, one being the Central City Concern housing project on the corner of Beaver Creek and Fur. And as a lot of you remember, that's the old Ward Weaver property. And they did a very nice presentation and answered all of our questions. And I anticipated some negative comments, or at least some pushback on this, but there really wasn't any, except for concern for traffic and perhaps a little bit about the water drainage off of the parking lot that they're proposing. And then I think it was like a week later, I got an email from some concerned citizens about developing that parcel. And I wrote back to them that, they missed an opportunity by not showing up at the neighborhood association meeting to voice their concern. So it's, I don't know, you can't please them all, I guess, but it really pays off to attend the neighborhood association meetings. We have 2 other land use issues that we're going to be hearing tomorrow evening. And again, we're at the Ixtapa restaurant there in the Danielson's complex.
Damon?
McLaughlin's meeting is this Thursday at the 7th Street Fire Station, 7 o'clock. And I can't for the life of me remember I couldn't find my little card as to who our guests are. But I guess one bit of news for the city that's neighborhood related. Those of you who enjoy your Mike's Burgers and stuff, Mike's is going to be developing itself out of existence. So if you enjoy their service, you enjoy their food, go now. I am anticipating that come March, April building season, they're going to be tearing the building down and putting up a storefront that's more street frontage and then parking in the back. which for those of us who've tried to go through their parking lot and get out, maybe is not such a bad thing. But for us old hands who remember when it was A&W and the gal would come out with roller skates and hang things on your window, it's a sad day. But other than that, things have been, pretty calm. We've been working for the last 4 to 6 months with trying to get a neighborhood mapping going as part of the hazard preparation stuff. One of the things that we had somebody come and talk to us, and we've had some people go to other meetings. And one of the concepts is to map your neighborhood, to go to your neighbors, find out who they are, how many people are there, how many pets are there. So if there's the earthquake and buildings are collapsing, fire, whatever. I mean, just being able to go to the fireman and say, they're on vacation, but they have 2 dogs and I haven't seen them. Those are the sort of things. We get a Columbus Day storm again, and power lines are down and roads are blocked. Knowing who the guy is on your street with the chainsaw is kind of a useful thing to know. Who the guy on your street is with the working fireplace, so you can all huddle around it because all the power's down, wherever that may be. Those are all part of that neighborhood mapping, and there's actually a little calendar of that you can get. And I think the fire station actually has them. Do you have any of them, John? That they're like.
No, but we've seen them at this meeting. The brochure that you're talking about.
I might have some left from the last time. I'll have to look and see.
Yeah, but we're just starting to get started with that, and for some people, the idea of I know my neighbor immediately around me, but I don't know 2 doors away. Oh, that's a little trepidatious, but it's a useful thing to know.
They probably know you, though.
Oh, yeah. They know me.
I do
I'm the guy in
have the
the
contact
pink house.
information at the county of who you can get more of those Map Your Neighborhood things from. Because we've gotten extras before, if you need them.
Kimberly, do you want to introduce yourself tonight and say anything?
Well, I am Kimberly Dye. I know, I'm going to defer to Brian, because
Okay.
my first meeting was literally a week ago.
Yeah. Well, we're happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Tony?
So Berkeley Hills neighborhood is it's going very well. We had a meeting October 8th, and we had the police liaison, come over and talk to us about what's going on with the city and crime rates and everything. And we had a little bit of discussion. The attendance wasn't as great as it was just back to default. That's what it used to be, and a lot of people knew about it. They were just like, something came up, it's last minute, things like that. But there was something that I consulted Amy about, I think a few weeks ago, on a street in Berkeley Hills neighborhood, and it's on Applegate. It's just before you hit the park on Berkeley Hills, and they have a private drive at the end of it. So a client of mine was selling a house there, and I was the listing agent. So I was kind of stuck in this pickle of being a realtor and chairman of the Berkeley Hills because I have to get people together to see what we can do to fix the street. It was in really bad shape. And that neighborhood was built about, I think, in the 70s. So they still had the original concrete pad driveway, and it's I'd say about 45-degree incline from the cul-de-sac. So as bad as it was, trying to explain to them that it's sort of a liability, insurance-wise, if anybody's to get hurt on that, really bad part of the street, that they're all liable for it. And according to the CCNRs, they own it's an easement, so the 5 homes there, they all are part of it. They have to maintain it, even though when they bought the properties, they didn't quite sign a maintenance agreement. But in the CCNRs is there, they all own it, they have to take care of it. So I was asking her if she could ask anybody, I don't know, maybe John might be able to throw some light on this, if there's any way they can go about this, since the city has nothing to do with it, since it's private. Do we just pretty much just enforce the state statute, which is whoever is to pay for it, they will have to sue the other ones to get their money back, something like that. So it was tricky. It was just only 5 people, but I didn't know how difficult it was going to be to get 5 people to agree to fix their own driveway. It was.
So rather than use meeting time, we could probably talk. I know Katie and I have recently had some conversations about another neighborhood, actually out of South End, that has, it's not a neighborhood association, it's a homeowners association. And same kind of issues. The city typically doesn't get involved in those, but we can talk more about that offline.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Tony.
But otherwise, everything is going well.
Good.
Yeah.
Brian?
Okay, I'm Brian Boyce with the Two Rivers Neighborhood Association. We did have a meeting about a week ago. We got Kim elected, our vice chair, and we had the police liaison show up for the first time and had quite a lengthy conversation with him. And we're also doing things that most of you have done many years ago, like I was trying to handle all the planning issues that came to us, and got that distributed among several people. So we have a committee now instead of just me, the chair. And other than that, I don't have a lot to report. We're just slowly moving along, and we'll have another meeting in January.
That sounds like great. Good. Yeah, that's great advancement. Todd, anything more from you?
I'll just say we had our meeting in October, and we had also had our police liaison there. It was always very well received, and didn't have any big issues. Just we're talking about ideas from the citizens of what they'd like to see in speakers in the future.
Great. Okay. Diane?
Could I ask Tony a question about his meeting?
Yeah.
We've been reading about all that vandalism in the cemetery. Has your neighborhood, the neighbors or the members of the association, or the neighbors, expressed any concern, or are they? I know the police. Well, I'm not sure who's supposed to be handling that, but have the neighbors proposed any like watches or neighborhood watch or something specifically to stave off some of that terrible vandalism?
Nobody actually have ever quite mentioned anything mostly about the vandalism. They just, we have this little Facebook thing, page.
Mostly yours?
And the next door neighborhood stuff. So people just post on there if they see anything suspicious, or watch out for so-and-so person, or I just saw a handbag hanging on the tree in front of my house, random things like that.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, so they tell them what's going on. They just want to alert everybody else. But for the vandalism, nobody has actually in my immediate neighborhood said anything about that.
Okay. Well, we are adjourned at 9:05. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. We started 15 minutes.